Okay, sir. So let me have this privilege to introduce one of the very seasoned and experienced, professors of English at present in India. He is none other than our very respected, my elder brother-like figure, Professor Dr. Suresh Agrawalji. And keeping his, credentials in hand, it's even a matter of, I think, a great honor and privilege for me. Because in the morning I was just going through his credentials and found it very, very, I think worthy to read, because all the recognitions, awards, accolades are there that you look forward in an academician's biodata or credentials, and I think is a class apart, to be very honest. And whatever I know about him, I think I know very little about him, because the biodata, it shows that in Sanskrit there is a ukti, and I like to begin his introduction on that note. So samaye swalam samajaye sarvasam. That means you do little bit for yourself and do everything for others. अपनों के लिए, अपने लिए थोड़ा और दूसरों के लिए बहुत कुछ आपने जोड़ा. I think we have such a great person among us. Let me introduce Professor Dr. Suresh Kumar before you. From where I should begin? This is I think, a $1 million question. So he has got many recognitions. He is the nominee on the selection committee of Mahatma Gandhi Antarashtriya Vishwavidyalaya, Hindi Vishwavidyalaya, Wardha from June 2018. He has been again nominated by the Honorable Governor of Rajasthan on Academic Council of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Law University, Jaipur, since August 2020. Again, by the Honorable Governor of Rajasthan, who is in fact Chancellor of all the institutions and universities of Rajasthan. He was nominated on the Board of Management, Secondary Education Board, Rajasthan, from 2003 to 2008. Then again, by the Honorable Governor of Rajasthan, he was nominated on the Board of Management, Secondary Education Board, Rajasthan, from 2014 to 2018. He served as a member of the Local Programs Planning and Management Committee of UGC HRDC, Gujarat University, Ahmedabad, from 2017 to 19. Subject expert of STRIPE UGC program. He served many years. And see the love for this motherland, Janmi Janma Bhumi Sargadapi Garyasi. I think he epitomized this particular ukti. He was offered the post of associate professor in English, which one could not deny. It's a big temptation, I think, but he denied it. And that was offered by Carroll University, Wisconsin, USA in the year 2011. He became, he was nominated as subject expert on selection committee for college lecturers. The student, they should pay attention on it. Rajasthan Public Service Commission, Ajmer, many a times. And he was the member of subject expert selection committee for assistant professor of English, Rajasthan Technical University, Kota. So I think having him, it's a really great honor. The list is very long, and the awards and honors he got, I think, as I was talking before the lecture, he was chosen of that program, which is jointly organized by MHRD and Monash University, Melbourne, Australia. It was Leadership of Academician Program, LEAP, and it's the rarest of rare achievement, I tell you. And he was under training from 16 to 30th December 2019. First part, it was conducted by AMU Aligarh, as I got this information from him. The second part, it was conducted from 15 to 22nd February 2020 at Monash University, Melbourne, Australia. He was awarded Departmental Research Award by the University of Rajasthan, Jaipur, Best Teacher Award, Shekhawati Society, Rajasthan. Was offered Devang Mehta National Education Awards of the Best Professor in English Studies in 2019. Highly qualified, MA English, MPhil in ELT, PhD also, of course, and members of various screening selection committee, and some more I like to add, like B.R. Ambedkar University, Agra, where he was the subject expert selection committee of associate professor, member subject expert selection committee of associate professor English, Gujarat University, Ahmedabad, member screening committee for the post of assistant professor, ASKRI University, Bikaner, member screening evaluation committee. I am telling you, rather, it's a very, very important and very, very responsible job that he held it successfully. Of course, member screening evaluation committee, College of Engineering and Technology, Bikaner, member ACT, that is the, I think the, just like NET we have, and at the state level we have set election modulation committee, Rajasthan Public Service Commission, Ajmer. Very rich experience of teaching at PG and MPhil level, almost equal to the age of some of our students, 32 years. And administrative experience is also not far behind, around 27 plus years. And present position, Dean of Faculty of Arts, Maharaja Ganga Singh University, from 2014 till that. Of course, 7 plus years he has been on the chair of Dean. Director of IQAC, Maharaja Ganga Singh University, Bikaner. NEC coordinator, very responsible again, and very, very, I think important, as well as very, I should say, challenging. But he likes challenges, I think. Maharaja Ganga Singh University, Bikaner. Member Secretary Planning and Monitoring Board, Maharaja Ganga Singh University. Member Research Board, Maharaja Ganga Singh University, Bikaner. Director Finishing Schools, which is a new concept. I think he has brought there over there. It's related to, if I'm not wrong, sir, skills development, Maharaja Ganga Singh University, Bikaner. And he has been head Department of English, Maharaja Ganga Singh University, Bikaner, from 9th June 2011 till time and date, almost 10 years. Member of Board of Management, Maharaja Ganga Singh University, Bikaner, from 2011 till date. Director of Internal Quality Assurance Cell, IQAC, from 2014 to till time and date of Maharaja Ganga Singh University, Bikaner. Member of Academic Council as VC nominee. He is there for many years, almost 7 years or so. And convener of committee to settle the class of unfair means, Maharaja Ganga Singh University. And director of Pandit Madan Mohan Malvi Center for Value Education. See how many posts, how many, prestigious jobs he is rendering over there. Value Education, Maharaja Ganga Singh University. And of course, professor is there. He is the very much, I think, senior professor at the Department of English. It's their honor to have him from 9th June 2011. So when I approached to him, he said, I will be there. You see the greatness and the humility that he has. He is the external member, Senior Research Committee, University of Kota, Rajasthan, and so many prestigious positions he is holding. Member on Committee of Deans, and to look after other day-to-day university work in the absence of Vice Chancellor of Maharaja Ganga Singh University, Bikaner. And you see, today even he is very much well before the time. And I was talking about this particular punctuality of him, and I don't have any words. See the greatness, humility, and the simplicity that he has, that around 10:45 or 50 he joined, and he said, Navinji, whether I'm on time or not. You see the level, you see the academic approach of him, and the coordinator of 12B, which is very important for the university to have. And he is there in the recognition committee, convener of University Flying Squad, Center Superintendent many a times, convener of Instruction Committee for affiliated colleges, which is also a very, very challenging job. University nominee on the selection committee for Teacher Research Fellow. Some of you may like to join, and he is very much there to help us out. University nominee or UGC observer to regulate UGC funds, which any university require very much to run its operation. Member selection principals, faculty members of affiliated colleges, and then the coordinator of MPCT, that is the MPhil PhD combined entrance test of MDSU, that is Bikaner, coordinator of PhD coursework, and the coordinator of coursework from a university is developing a lecture in our coursework. I think this is very, very honorable for us, and I think it senses a lot. Head of Department of English, of course, of earlier where he was working, Janardhan Rai, Nagar University, if I'm not wrong, sir, Udaipur, and he was the foreign students advisor. Therefore, he was asking Rinaji some questions related to their origin and everything. Of JRNRV University, Udaipur, coordinator of certificate course in English in the University of Udaipur, coordinator communicative English UGC sponsored vocational course of University of Udaipur, coordinator UGC fresher course in English, UGC academic campus, JRNRV University Udaipur, member of BBM program committee, convener of school education committee, recognition committee, secondary education board Rajasthan for many years, and chairperson board of studies JRNRV University Udaipur, member expert on selection committee for principals, faculty members of affiliated colleges. So you see, it is the part that he was carrying along with him in the context of administrative jobs. In academics, he is also contributing very significantly. He has been rather member course of development committee Vardhaman Mahavir Open Quota University, member of committee of course Jai Narayan Vyas University Jodhpur, member committee of course book writers secondary education Rajasthan Ajmer. And I am telling you one of the secrets that he keeps writing regular articles featured in all the prestigious newspapers of English. If you name one, and there are many, Times of India, Hindu, some of the articles even I received at regular intervals through that WhatsApp that I have the privilege to have of him. Member committee of course book writers secondary education Rajasthan Ajmer, member external senior research committee Kota University Kota, member external board of studies Bikaner University Bikaner, convener board of studies NRV University Udaipur, external member board of studies English Jain Vishwa Bharati University Ladun, external member departmental research committee which is known as DRC of Jain Vishwa Bharati University Ladun, member departmental research committee Maharaja Suresh Kumar Bridge University Bharatpur, external member board of studies English Jain Vishwa Bharati University Ladun, convener committee of course in English secondary education board Rajasthan, member curriculum committee secondary education board Rajasthan, member board of studies University of Kota, and member board of studies BN University Udaipur. And we are enough fortunate to have him on our boards as well as he is very, very helping to us. He is also member on the board of studies of our university Sanchi University, and the first year the syllabus of English has been revised under his actually masterly guidance. I'm really thankful to him for that also, sir. His areas of specialization: English language teaching, stylistics, subaltern studies, especially tribal studies, translation studies, and cultural studies. So I hope that the students of our university will be highly benefited by his rich and diverse experiences. Books, almost 35 years authored, and the chapters he contributed to 10 volumes, almost 44 chapters he has contributed. Research articles in the UGC approved peer-reviewed journals, more than 40. And he has been the UGC, he has successfully completed UGC research projects, 1 major and 2 minors, in total 3. And he has been involved in the Encyclopedia of Indian Poetics, recognized by UNESCO as a project of international values 1, and which is still undergoing, I think. And he was also very much instrumental in that volume on Rajasthani language of People's Linguistic Survey of India. It is a translation project of Bhasha published by Orient Black Swan publication, which is very, very reputed publication, I tell you. And he is there in that Marwari Hindi English Dictionary, a translation project of Kendri Hindi Sansthan Agra, and it was successfully completed by him. And now you have that dictionary that you can even explore on Google. Translation projects on Kumar Swami's works. It was offered by the Mahatma Gandhi Antarashtriya Hindi Vishwavidyalaya Wardha, which is ongoing. And you are only few, to be very honest. He has supervised almost 23 plus PhD under his able guidance. And MPhil he has supervised around 26 and plus, and PG, that is the MA programs, dissertation may be there, and in that I think 6 he has supervised, 6 plus seminar he attended, organized under his able leadership. He has been the coordinator of international seminars around 2. In one of them I was also there. I think it should be 3. 2 it was, because I'm having the old, not very recently updated. Director of National Symposia 2, organizing secretary of National Seminar 1, UGC sponsored refresher courses under his able guidance have been completed, 2 almost. Coordinator National Workshop 1, member of organizing committee 2 he has completed, member advisory board of national international seminars and conferences, almost 10 plus. And he is involved in the lecture series on the new education policy 2020 for 10 days. And I think it was a time when I was disturbing a lot, and it was during the time of drafting of our revised or revamped syllabus of MN English. I'm really sorry for that. Now I could easily understand that how you were busy, and I was lucky enough to have your valuable time in those days. And he is the coordinator of PhD course of MGS University, coordinator of MPCT, that is the MPhil PhD combined entrance test of his university. And one more thing, sir. Let me finish, sir, please, sir.
Navinji, please stop it now, because people are getting bored. All right.
No, sir. No, they will not get bored. They will seek inspiration from it. And let me finish, only 1 or 2 minutes I will be taking. And he has presented paper in the national international seminars around 70 plus, invited a special lecturer, delivered national level lectures at the around 60 plus, and he has visited many foreign countries. Especially I would like only few of them, like Nepal. He went there to present a paper and chaired a session in the international conference of NELTA, Kathmandu on 20 February 2011, and Monash University that I discussed earlier, Melbourne, Australia. He was there from 15 to 22nd February 2020 as part of the leadership for academic program that I was asking as well. And he has attended orientation program from JNU. It was offered on one, and then the refresher course he attended at IFLU, Hyderabad, and one at MSU, Baroda. So, sir, with folded hands, I would like to extend my heartiest welcome from the Department of English and from the Department of Diaspora and Migration Studies, Sachi University of Buddhist-Indic Studies, to bless us and to guide us further, so that we can also trade your noble path, and we would become we would get some energy out of your that aura of energy or aura of your wisdom, sir.
Thank you so much, Navinji, for the generosity that you have done to me. I would call it a generosity, because when you attribute the metaphors which one does not really deserve, and then you really keep saying, you rather motivate him. And I do hope that this motivation has done me a lot of good things. And when I speak, I come up to the expectations that you have from my side. Before I begin, I would like to start by putting a huge gratitude to the Honorable Vice Chancellor of the University, my friend Professor Nirja Arun Gupta ji, and Dr. Naveen ji Mehta. As he rightly said, he is like my younger brother. And the generosity that they have done by offering this chance to me, I shall always be grateful for that.
Sir, I'm really sorry to interrupt. Could I ask students to open their camera so that it could be a live or interactive session?
That they must be wonderful. Yes, they must do that. They must do that. They must do that.
They must, sir.
I would request every one of you to open your camera so that it may be an interactive session. Suman Kapoor ji, I can see her face now. I can say Simran Yadav's face also. Pradeep Chandravanshi is not visible. Now she is visible. 2 others, I do not know who they are. Their cameras are not open, means they are not on. Brijesh Kumar is open. Prathama Sinha, I can see her face now. But the 2 who are here, symbolically, one is B and the other one, the figure is there, but then their camera is not open. You find out who they are and ask them to open their camera. Anyone, as I said, my gratitude must be documented. And I would, for that purpose, I would command Naveenji to do it, because that gratitude, documentation of my gratitude is a must. Because very often we get a chance to speak in the seminars and the conferences, but let me tell you, it's really difficult to interact with the people who are really interested in the core of the things that you are going to speak. And I think that every one of you who are here, you are a learner, you have come to learn, I am equally a learner, and therefore it would be an interactive session. And for this interaction, I am really grateful to Naveenji. He has all the time been pursuing and telling me, sir, please oblige us. And in fact, I have not obliged him, he has obliged me by giving me this chance. Let me tell you, dear friends, I would be talking about some very fundamentals of research. And one of the things that all of us are supposed to do when we do our PhD is to write a PhD dissertation. And when we write a PhD dissertation, what are we doing? Usually we say that we are carrying out the research work. Now, the moment the word research occurs to our mind, we think that we are going to do something new, we are going to invent, we are going to discover. Of course, it is a discovery, but maybe in the case of literature, it may not be invention. It may not be invention all the time. It may be discovery or a reinterpretation of the facts which already exist. And this is how the research in the field of literature differs the fields from the researchers in the field of science and sometimes even the social sciences. So basically, when we talk about researchers, I would say, of course, when we talk about researchers in the field of linguistics and literature, I'm combining the two. I'm not talking about the researchers only in the field of literature, but linguistics also, and especially English language teaching. When we look at these researchers, what do they do? Either they are concerned with the discovery part of the facts which have not been brought to light yet, number one, or number two, we are interested in giving a reinterpretation of the existing facts. So this is how, but in the case of science, maybe that we are interested in inventing something. Now, in the case of the researches which we people undertake, usually the invention or the reinvention usually does not exist. So with this note, I would like to begin by telling you, as you are all aware, what are you all aware? You are all aware that you are supposed to write a dissertation. And I would be very pragmatic in my approach. I would be talking to you on the fundamentals, how to go about it. And when we sit down to write a research work, the very first thing that strikes us, what would be my theoretical framework, number one, or let me say number two. And number one, I would say, what would be my conceptual framework. And let me admit here in front of all of you, I have evaluated more than 800 theses by now, and it was not more than 10 to 12 theses that I found that the conceptual and the theoretical research work was there. And therefore, this is a great lacuna that we have. Our students are not acquainted, and sometimes I tender my apology in advance that even our supervisors are not aware of it, because the way they carried out the researches was simply that they have to prepare a bundle of the papers and somehow submit it to the university. Now, therefore, when we talk about, so today I would be talking about, I would be focusing on the conceptual framework of the research, number one. And number two, then I will be talking about the theoretical framework of the research. Now, let me begin by saying something about the theoretical framework first, although it is chapter number 2, but I will not be talking about it much, and therefore I will finish it and then I will continue with the conceptual framework. Naveenji, I hope that I may be given full 1 hour, because you wasted 20 minutes talking about me.
No,
That's,
sir. No, it was our honor. You can
so,
extend, sir. You can extend
I
up to
would,
whatever you like, sir.
if these people like, what I would do is I would continue to speak up till 12:15, if you permit, because
No,
you
sir.
see, there are certain things which I need to discuss with these people.
All permissions are lying with you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So, number one, the theoretical framework. what is the theoretical framework? Any idea? Because he said let it be interactive session. So I would begin by asking you, what do you mean by theoretical framework? Do you have any faint idea about the notion theoretical framework? And if you have, please come on, let me know what do you mean by theoretical framework. As the name suggests, if you answer, I will not speak, I will wait. And if you don't answer, I will tell you. Prathama Sinha, would you speak something? Would you say? Or anyone else? Reena ji, Simran
Good morning,
Yadav
sir.
ji,
Good morning, sir. It is a
would,
theory that support our research work or
it
holds
is
our
a
research
theory
work.
that support our research work. Very true. So what are you trying to say is that whenever we are talking about the theoretical framework, we are talking about the theory aspect of the research work. Right, we are talking about the theory aspect of the research work. In other words, when we talk about the theoretical research work framework, what are we doing? We are talking about a collection of interrelated theories. What is theoretical framework? We are talking about a collection of interrelated theories which will guide our research work. So when we talk about theoretical framework, we would be mentioning the interrelated theories associated with my research work. And then I will be mentioning how shall I make use of these theories when I analyze or go forward or undertake the research work. Now, for example, if you are doing something on subalterns or doing something on, let us say, feminism. Now, subalterns, what will you do? First of all, you will be talking about from where did the word subaltern come? And then you will be saying that it came from Gramsci, Antonio Gramsci, if you are aware of it. In what sense Gramsci made use of it? And then you will be talking about various types of scholars and critics who have worked upon it. Can you name a few? One, at least two names you must be familiar with. One is Ranjit Guha. He has written volumes on, he is an Indian, but then perhaps he has shifted to America now and is living in America. And the other one, Reena ji must be aware of that, Gayatri Spivak. And you must be aware of that she wrote that is the manifesto that she wrote, Can the Subalterns Speak? For the subalterns. Now, therefore, when we talk about subalterns, we will be talking about all these things under the theoretical framework. Now, there is another word that has also come up, and that would be gendered, that is gendered subalternism. Now, when we talk about gendered subalternism, what do we mean by that? I will be talking about that also. I will be talking about that also. When we talk about gendered subalternism, what do? We say number one, when we talk about gender, that women are doubly subordinated. First, on the basis of nation or the national hierarchy, and then the second on the basis of gender. Because every dictate they come from the male, and the females are supposed to follow them. All right, so this is gendered subalternism. And this gendered subalternism says that when women suffer, they suffer, as we say, twice born. They suffer twice. Number one, they suffer on the basis of the discourse, national discourse. And what has been the pioneering things in the case of national discourse, when we talk about the national discourse, we say that women always come, they are always second. Women are always second, they are never first. And when we talk about the gender, then the dictates again, from where do they come from? They come from the male. So this is double subordination of the women that we talk about. So all these things we will be talking about when we are doing something on subalterns. Because without which, if you are not mentioning, if you are not taking care of the theoretical part, then you become a person. A researcher is without a torch, groping into the darkness, and there is no one to guide him properly. Now, these theories are a sort of guide for us. They tell us that this direction has already been taken, and now But then this work has not been taken up from that direction. So what I will do, I will try to examine, I will try to investigate, I will try to analyze the work from this point of view. Right? So theoretical framework. So in brief, what is theoretical framework? You will be talking about the theory concerned. So a theoretical framework will contain a collection of interrelated theories that will guide us throughout the research. All right, and it would be a complete chapter. Perhaps usually you should keep second chapter for this purpose, theoretical framework. Now, the first chapter must relate to the conceptual framework. And when we talk about the conceptual framework is the lays down the specific direction. Conceptual framework, I repeat what I have said, conceptual framework lays down the specific direction by which the research will be carried forward. A specific direction by which the research will be carried forward. And therefore, when we talk about the conceptual framework, it answers all the questions, primarily the question of why and how. And when we talk about the question why have I undertaken this research? And the answer will not be that I want to get my PhD degree and therefore I have to do it. No. Right? The objectives. Here, the objectives you need to mention. Why did you decide, or what is your purpose of doing this research work? What is your purpose of doing this research work? You are interested in knowing the objectives of your research. Right? So, why it will answer, and it will answer not only why, but it will answer the how part of it. How means when we talk about how, it will also mention the research methodology. Research methodology, it will answer. It will also answer the question related to method, which method are you going to make use of? And not only this, when we talk about this, we are also interested in all the other things, that how your research work will be taken up. And therefore, you must have heard there is a term called research gaps. There is a term called what is research gap. I will be talking about this research gap a little later. But then when we talk about conceptual framework, you need to keep three things in mind. Number one, it lays down the specific direction by which the research will be carried forward. Number two, the conceptual framework lays down the why and how of the research. And number three, we are interested in finding the research gaps and talking about the relevance and significance of the research work which we have decided to take up. Right? So these are the things in which the conceptual framework is interested in. Now I will be talking about these things one by one. Now, when you write the conceptual framework, how should you begin? Usually we begin by writing that I am writing introduction to the research work. Do we really write introduction to the research work? And I tell you, that sounds to be very elementary when you say introduction. Rather than making use of the word introduction, you should say problem to be investigated or problem to be examined. It is from there that your chapter 1 must start. Problem to be investigated. Now what you can do is chronologically you can start, or you can start rhetorically. Maybe it may be top down or down top. You can start from, let us say, 1930 and then come to 2022, or you can start from 2022 and can come to 930. But usually what we do is we go to the history first and then come to the present. Right? So this is what we will do when we talk about problem to be investigated. And then indirectly what you will say, that this has been done by him. This is what you will say. This has happened in this year. This has happened in this year. But then you will come to your point. And what would be the point? In one line statement, you will be stating the problem. Now the problem to be investigated will end with the statement of problem. Okay, are you getting my point? You will be writing the statement of problem after problem to be investigated ends. Write your statement of problem, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, not more than that. And then in accordance with the statement of problem, you will be talking about all the other things. Then you will be talking about the objectives. Then you will be talking about the hypothesis, then you will be talking about the universe of the research, then you will be talking about the research methodology, and research methodology will be quite comprehensive. Then you will be talking about the literature review or review of literature, then you will be talking about the research gaps, and then finally you will be talking about the relevance and tentative plan of the research work. These are the major components of the conceptual research work. Now, when we talk about this conceptual research work, when we talk about the objectives, as I said, objectives answer the question why. But then there are certain interrelated words that we must be interested in. For example, I'm talking about something very fundamental, elementary, but very pragmatic. I have chosen the pragmatic point of view so that it may be a little bit beneficial for you people, and I can also learn from you people through interaction that follows. I hope the interaction will follow at the end. You people are not speaking right now, although you are free to speak. You can interrupt me any moment you wish. So if you can simply raise your hand and I will stop and answer your question. But then I would wish that interaction must be there. If it is not right now, it must be there at the end. Now, the question that must have come from your side, sir, we talk about the objectives, why not aims? And sometimes we talk about aims and objectives both, but why not goals? So, is there any relationship between aims, objectives, and goals? Let me tell you, basically, when we talk about the objectives, we are putting the word objective, but then we are concerned with the aims, objectives, and goals, all the three. The why question is being answered by all the three. So this is the commonality among all the three. But then there is a difference. When we talk about the aims, aim denotes the broader perspective. And goals and objectives are the part of it. For example, what is my aim? I want to make the people familiar with the discovery of this research so that they may be benefited by this. Aim. But then what is the objective? The objective is that my discipline does not have a specific direction to teach this. And therefore my purpose is to undertake this this research so that classroom teaching may be improved. Objective. When we talk about aims, aims are broader in perspective, but objectives are not so. Objectives are limited in perspective, they are confined to the spaces. All right, aims may be broader than the objectives. And when we talk about the aims, objectives and goals, both of them are the part of the aims. Now, the question is how the objectives differ from the goals. And therefore, remember, when we talk about the objectives, objectives are always tangible and concrete. And therefore, when you talk about tangible and concrete, what would be the objective? The set of activities and the actions that you will be taking up while doing your research work, that will be the objectives. Set of activities that you will be doing. Right? So objectives are tangible, they are concrete. But on the other hand, when we talk about the goals, they are abstract. And abstract means they denote the ideas, but objectives denote the activities and the actions that you will take up while doing the research work. And usually when we mention the research, the objectives of the research work, you can write all the three: aims, objectives, aims, goals, and objectives. But the sequence must be followed. You cannot say objectives, goals, and aims. That would be not proper to say, because we need to follow the sequence. We need to say aims, then say goals, then say objectives. Or simply, if you write the objectives and mention all the three, nobody will be raising any question about it. They will agree, all of them will agree that in fact it is in the means the short term that the candidate has mentioned all the three under the head objective, and they must be written under the chronological order: number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. And they must not be very long. Let me tell you, an objective must not contain some 10 sentences, maximum 3, 4, 5 sentences. All right, and objectives must not be so many. Usually we should not have more than 5 objectives when we try to carry out, because finally what will you say? Whether I have fulfilled these objectives, whether the objectives have been attained or not, that you will say when you write the final chapter of your thesis. And it becomes very difficult for you to formulate a hypothesis if you keep a number of objectives. And therefore, let me tell you that the number of your objectives must be limited. And usually they must not exceed 5. Usually, in the case of an ideal research work. Usually people keep 7 to 8 also. But I prefer, when I guide my student, I say don't keep more than 3 or 4. Because if you keep more than 3 or 4, then you need to formulate the research questions or the hypothesis the way the objectives have been formulated. So that becomes a problem, because you see, you need to strike a balance among all these things. And if you fail to do that, in that case, your very purpose of taking up the research will be thwarted. So I hope that the difference between objectives, goals, and aims is very clear. Aims, very broader in perspective. Goals and objectives are the part of aims. Goals are abstract, they denote the ideas, but objectives are concrete, they denote actions and activities. Is it clear? Is it clear? Say yes or no.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Now, after having done objectives, let me come to the other part of it, the second, and that is very significant. Naveenji will object and he will say, sir, we don't have hypothesis in literary work. Yes, we don't have. But then let us know what hypothesis is. Because as I said, when I started talking about the fundamentals of research, I said that I would not be confining only to the literature, but I would be talking about linguistics also. So when we talk about linguistics, we need to have hypothesis. In the case of literary research, usually we don't have hypothesis, and therefore we need to know why don't we have hypothesis in the case of literary work, and why do we have hypothesis in the case of a linguistic work. Basically, when we talk about a linguistic work, they are usually the survey works. They are usually the survey works. And therefore, what a hypothesis is? Hypothesis, now listen to me very carefully. Hypothesis is the assumption that can be or that needs to be validated. Hypothesis is the assumption that needs to be validated. You say that this is my assumption. I assume this, that the people of this country are mad. For example, this is my hypothesis. Or we form a hypothesis that it was not the divide and rule policy of the British that made us slave to the Britishers. Hypothesis. Now, the data that I try to find out during the course of my research work, either way, I will prove it or I will disprove it. Means the thesis, the hypothesis will either be proved, will be validated, or will be non-validated. Will be validated or will be non-validated. Now, in the case of literature, it doesn't happen. You cannot say that this man has not said so. You will say she has said it. And on the basis of what is there, you will be interpreting the facts. In the case of the research work of literature, you are not trying to validate the things because there is no tool of measurement for you. In the case of linguistics, you do have the tools of measurement. You would say, I have got the survey of the people. You would say that I have conducted case studies. You would say that the language shows this. You would say that even the checklist which I have prepared, or the people whom I interviewed, they came out with these ideas. Now, these things usually are not the part of a literary work of research. And therefore, in the case of researches related to literature, we do have the research questions. We do not have hypothesis. We do have the research questions. And research questions are like your torch. They show you the light. You bear the torch in the form of the research questions. You bear the torch in the form of the research questions. You say, is it true that the Dalits are this? Is it true that the feminists have said this? Is it true? And then again, let me tell you, these research questions must not be very lengthy. Because when we make very long sentences which run in lines and lines, the very purpose of the research question is lost. And therefore, again, I would suggest you that your research questions must not be longer than 2-3 lines. All right, let us say 4 lines, not more than that. So that a person, even the outsider, the person who does not belong to your discipline, is very clear about the question that you have put up, that you have tried to answer through your research work. So usually now I have said 2 things so far. I try to define what hypothesis is. Hypothesis we don't have in the case of researches related to literature, but we do have research questions or literary questions. Now those questions are to be answered when you wind up your research work. Usually what happens is I find that there is no connect between the first chapter and the last chapter. There is no connect when you write your thesis. There is no connect between the first chapter and the last chapter. You decide that these are my research questions, but at the end you fail to answer those things. What do? You simply provide a summary of the things that you have done. And this is how your research work winds up. As I said, the sorry part of all the whole phenomenon is that I evaluated almost, I'm not boasting, but almost 800 theses. It was only in 10 to 15 theses that I came across theoretical framework. And theoretical framework, of course, sometimes they are there in more than 10 theses, but then conceptual framework was altogether missing. So keep in mind, without conceptual framework, because as I said, a conceptual framework give you the specific direction on the basis of which you need to carry forward your research work. If the conceptual framework is not there, you will become a researcher groping into the dark without any torch, without any candle. So keep this conceptual framework. Ask your supervisor if he's not interested, if he's not aware of it. Tell him that, sir, without conceptual framework, we cannot do any research work. It is a must for me. And then you tell him that, sir, let us do this, let us do this, let us do this. I do not know whether you have got some set format for this in your university, Naveenji. I am not aware of that. But then if you don't have, please try to develop that set format, that the first 2 chapters, the first chapter would be conceptual framework, the second chapter would be theoretical framework. And in the conceptual framework, in the first chapter, the candidate would be talking about all the things. And the other things, of course, my knowledge is very limited. The things that I talk about and the other things which can be gathered from others also. Because we need a specific direction. And in the absence of the conceptual framework, that specific direction is missing from the research. After having talked about this, basically we do have what we have. We do have now these research questions may be debatable. Sometimes they are focused. Sometimes they are choice-based. Maybe choice-based questions may be there, debatable questions may be there, or focused questions may be there. Sometimes, therefore, you must have seen that some controversy come up. Why do the controversies come up? They come up because the questions are debatable. And this is what the researches are meant for. But then when you undertake the research, be very careful that your variables are well chosen. And when I talk about the variables, because very often you would write a selected study, a study of selected novels of, let us say, Kamla Markande. And then I ask the people, why do you say select? What has been the criterion for the selection? Why can't you say select? Why do you say selected? And the people fail to answer those questions. People fail to answer those questions. You criteria for that, isn't it? There must be some criteria for that. If the criteria are not there, in that case, it would sound very fuzzy. It would sound very fuzzy if the criteria is not there. The criteria must be there. If the criteria are not there, in that case, it would be very fuzzy for you to go ahead. The criteria for selection, you would say that I selected this novel because of this reason. I selected 4 novels from a particular author and 4 novels from the other particular author, and these were the criteria that guided me. These were the criteria, perhaps, that the theme of these 4 novels are like that. The theme of the novel is like that. Naveen ji, will you excuse me for a single moment because there is an urgent call from my
Yeah,
vice
I can
chancellor.
understand, sir.
Just second
You are
moment.
so busy, but you are sparing your valuable time with us. I'm really thankful to you, sir. His through his credential, whatever I know, I have come to know about him, that he is next to VC over there, and it's a very big university. Maharaja, um, that university at Bikaner, it has got a number of more than 100 affiliated colleges. We do not have any affiliated colleges in our university. Our setup is quite different from their university, and is holding various chairs. So a professor of university, you can understand the dynamics of the professorship.
Sir,
What,
can
what
I
I
say something?
Yeah, why not, madam? 1 minute. Let me tell you something very important. That on 20th again we are going to meet, uh, or we will be interacting with a professor, Professor Dr. Monica Gupta. She is the professor and head of the department, Garhwal
20,
University. Professor Monica Gupta.
28th.
Yeah, tomorrow. That is
हाँ
tomorrow.
जी, हाँ जी,
And that
हाँ
will
जी,
be
हाँ जी.
the end of all our lectures from our end. But one more lecture will be there from Honorable Vice Chancellor. We approached to her on 1st of February. She will be delivering a lecture on how to write a research article. We requested her and she accepted our, that request without any formalities. And she said, yes, I will be there. So first she will be taking at 12:05. We have already fixed time for her because uh, after her,
Naveen ji, I am sorry for the
no, I'm
interruption that
really,
took place. Because you see, this was an urgent call from the vice
yeah,
chancellor. So
yes, I understand. I was telling them all these things.
I was trying to avoid his phone, but ultimately he was giving me call and call again, and it was very urgent. So I told him, sir, I am I am in a meeting
Yes,
with those people. In
yes,
fact, they have assigned me a task, and I'm trying to fulfill my duty. He said, no, go ahead. So
yes, sir.
after this is over, I will rush to his
I can
use
understand
of.
your busyness, sir. I can understand.
सर,
Okay,
नवीन जी को मैं ये कह रही थी कि इन्होंने इतना अच्छा इंट्रोडक्शन दिया है. He
Hmm.
invested 20 minutes. He did not waste 20 minutes. I'm just
Thank you.
correcting.
Thank you
So,
very much.
yes,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. I do not know because you see, sometimes I do not know because even otherwise also it would be so boring if you keep reading all these things. So when if these biodata would have come to me, I would keep them aside and I would say, yes, he has been a member on several committees. He has been nominee and all that, and
No,
I would
sir.
try to wind it up
I
with
have
him.
one. I have one personal interest in it. Once the recording will be off, then I will tell each and everybody what is the secret in it.
Okay, okay.
You also know.
Anyway, let us come back to because thereafter I have to rush to for the meeting. So, target universe of the research. We have talked about hypothesis. I think hypothesis and research questions are clear. Yes, is it okay? Right. Thereafter, we will be talking about the target universe of the research. And when we talk about the target universe of the research, basically we are interested in the entire group of the people who have been the part of that research work. Entire group of the people. Entire group of the people. Now we don't have the people. Now, when we talk about this targeted universe of the research, basically what we are talking target group of the people means or the population means we are talking about the researches which are conducted in the field of social sciences or sciences. In our case, they will be the books that we select for the studies. The number of the books that we selected, for example, the novels, for example, the poems or the poetry, for example, a comparative study, for example, the epics that we selected for the study, that would be the universe of the research. You would say that these are the four books written by these authors, or these are the Dalit writers, and I have chosen one work from each Dalit writer. Now, as I said, you must be very careful, and your rationale must be there in identifying or in making the selections. You say, I have selected this work of this particular author on this ground, and that ground must apply to all the author. For example, that may be the ground of gender, that may be the ground of, let us say, economics, that may be the ground of academics, that may be the ground of age, that may be the ground of something else. So these grounds must be very clear, or that may be the ground of nationality, that in the case of comparative literature, that may be the ground of internationality in the case of global literature or the world literature. So these parameters must be there in the mind when you decide to select the universe of the research. If this has not been taken care of, then I tell you, when you go for the Viva Voce examination, the examiner will be putting this question to you and will be asking you, why did you choose this work? There is no correlationship between the two. Why did you choose this and not this? Because if there is no correlationship, then your research is irrelevant in the sense that even your selection was not proper. Even your selection was not proper. So be very choosy, and the criteria means the variables. When I talk about these criteria, I am interested in the variables. Your variables must be such that everything become crystal clear. When the researcher, means the examiner, reads your thesis or anybody reads your thesis, it becomes very clear that these are the variables on the basis of which I have tried to find out the research universe of the research. After having done this, you can say, I have chosen the sampling method in the case of social science research. It doesn't apply to us. In the case of us, the variables must be identified. But in the case of social science research or linguistics, we need to take recourse to either the random sampling or, let me say, the absolute sampling or the non-random sampling. In the case of random sampling, I will choose any four. These are the four ones which suited me and therefore I selected them. But when you make the deliberate sampling, your variables must be very clear. For example, you say that from every colony, I have chosen 4 persons. From every colony, I have chosen 4 persons. From that area, I have chosen 6 persons. From that area, I have chosen 6 girls and 6 boys. And therefore, because you see, I need to strike a balance among all these variables which are there. So remember that when we talk about the targeted universe of the research, it must be designed in accordance with the variables of the research. If it has not been designed in accordance with the variables of the research, everybody would be putting a big question mark on it and would be saying, what do you mean when you talk about all this? There is nothing, there is no clarity. And therefore, when you say a study of the selected novels of Kamla Markande, now the criteria or the variables or the parameters must be there. What were the grounds on the basis of which you made the selection? Or if you say, there is a difference when you say, Navinji must be aware of it, a study of the select novels and the selected novels. There is a difference. When we talk about the select novels, we talk about the classic novel. Classic. Why do you call them classic? Either they have been very popular, or you call them classic because of the features that you have found them, and therefore you say that I have chosen the select work because I have found them classic from this point of view, and therefore this has been my criteria of selection. This has been my selection criteria, right? So targeted universe of the research. After having talked about the targeted universe of the research, we come to the most significant part of the conceptual framework, that is research methodology. And when we talk about the research methodology, what do we have? A research methodology, if I can sum it up, I would say that this is overall research strategy. This is what methodology is: overall research strategy and rationale. Overall research strategy and rationale will be the research methodology. Now, when we talk about overall strategy, very fine. But when we talk about the rationale, what do we mean? Now, when we talk about the rationale, we mean the set of regions. Rationale means RATIONALE, not NAL. Because when we talk about NAL, we mean the logicality or the logic. But when we talk about NALE, then we mean the set of regions that support our claim. The set of regions that support our claim. And therefore, when we talk about the research methodology, what do? We talk about the overall research strategy and the rationale that support our research work. Now, under this, we will be talking about the research method that we will make use of. We will also talk about the research approach that we will make use of. We will also talk about the technique that we will make use of. We will also talk about the strategy that we will use. We will also talk about the tools that and the instruments that we are going to make use of. Now I will be explaining, I will be talking about them one by one. Now the very first question that strikes my mind is that when we talk about the method is the way of doing the research. Research method is the way. You say, I will be doing, I will take recourse to analytical method. You would say, I will take recourse to textual method. Very fine. But my problem here is, I am not interested in the various types of method that you will be taking recourse to. My problem is that how does method differ from approach? How does method, for example, feministic approach? Will you say feministic method? No, you will never say that. You will say feministic approach. All right, you will not say feministic method. And if you say feministic method, again in the male-dominated country or the world, I would not say country, I would say male-dominated world, people will say he's very feministic. And feministic is supposed to be a term of hatred, a term of dislike. Feministic tendency, औरतों जैसी बातें करता है, औरतों जैसी बातें करता है. Although that should not be said, but then that has become almost a cliche. All right, so we will not be talking about that. So my question is, when we talk about method, because usually what I have come across is people are making use of these words as synonyms. Let me tell you, this is a fact. I will not talk about the supervisor and the candidate in one of the very prestigious universities. And it was not the state university, it was unfortunately or fortunately a central university. And the supervisor was also quite a senior person. And what he said, when I put a question to the researcher and the researcher did not answer in the Viva Voce examination as to how does a method and approach differ, and when the Viva Voce was over, that gentleman, when we were going for khana, because you see, this is a ritual that we do after the Viva Voce is over. So he said, sir, tell me, how are the two different? Because basically, when I talk about the two, I think that a method is a part of approach. That's it. Otherwise, what is the difference? I said, of course, that is also one of the differences. But then that does not clarify the fact that we do have the feminist approach, we don't have the feminist method. And he agreed, and then I told him that this is how it happens. Is there any idea in your mind, any one of you who can talk, who can tell me that this is what approach is and not method? I have given you one example. You will have feminist approach, but you will not have feminist. If you want to take it down, because usually the books do not talk about that. Approach is the assumption, the veracity of which cannot be challenged. Approach is the assumption, the veracity of which cannot, or the truthfulness of which cannot be challenged. The truthfulness of which cannot be challenged. Approach is the assumption, the veracity of this assumption cannot be challenged. Now I want to give you one example of this, another example, very simple example. And the example is, for example, I have to come to your place, Sanchi. There are various ways of coming to Sanchi. I would say I would go to Delhi, and from Delhi, I would come to Sanchi. I would say, no, I would not go to Delhi, I would go to Jaipur because I have got some task over there. And from Jaipur, I would come to Sanchi. And there are several other ways. But the fact that cannot be denied is that I will reach Sanchi. Don't say that it will take more time. These are the variables. But the fact is that I will reach Sanchi. The assumption, therefore, the assumption is I will reach that particular place. Maybe tomorrow, day after tomorrow, maybe that I will take recourse to this, but nobody can challenge my assumption. And what is my assumption? My assumption is that I will reach Sanchi. But when I talk about the method, what I do, how I will come to Sanchi. Maybe that I will come by flight, maybe that I will come by bus, or I will come by road, or maybe that I will travel by train, or maybe that there is a friend of mine who lives there in Sanchi. he has come to Jaipur, and then along with him in his car, I will ride to Sanchi. Various ways, method. Very often when I talk about there is a temple here, Nimach Mata ka Mandir in Udaipur, not here in Bikaner. So whenever I illustrate them this, I give them this notion. I say, मुझे नीमच माता जाना है. कैसे जाऊंगा? जाऊंगा तो सही, ये तो है ना, मैं इधर से जाऊं तो भी पहुंचूंगा, उधर से जाऊं तो भी पहुंचूंगा, तीसरी जगह से जाऊं तो भी पहुंचूंगा. Everybody would say yes, sir. Now I tell them, don't put this question that it will take more time. Of course, these are the variables, but I will reach. और कैसे जाऊंगा? Maybe that I will go on foot, maybe that I will go on bicycle, maybe that I will go by car. That would be the method. But then the approach is that I would reach Nimach Mata temple. So approach is the assumption, the validity of which cannot be challenged. Now you can ask me this question, sir, then why can't feminist be a method? Why feminism is an approach? Can you deny the fact that women have always been a sufferer? The underlying notion of feminism, what is the underlying notion of feminism? That there has been a hegemon at the top of the society. And who is that hegemon? The hegemon is the male. And all the dictates, they have come from the male to the female. So, and this is the very perception of feminism. What is the very perception of feminism? That women have suffered because this is a male-dominated society. All the dictates come from the male, and nobody can deny that. Nobody can deny that. And therefore, feminist approach, not feminist method. All right, feminist method means you are talking about the way the women are working or the women style of working. But when we talk about feminist approach, we are keeping in mind the theory of feminism, which believe in the fact that women have always been at the receiving end and they have suffered at the hands of the males, because the males have always occupied the upper hierarchy in the society and the dictates have come from them. Sometimes it has been not only exploitation, but double exploitation, sometimes triple exploitation at the level of the nation, at the level of the space, at the level of the gender and several other things. But then the underlying notion is that women has been a sufferer, and therefore feminist approach, because nobody can deny this. All right, the assumption which cannot be denied by anybody, and therefore it would be feminist approach. Similarly, you will not say subaltern method, because when you say subaltern method, then it gives altogether a different meaning. Subaltern method means a primitive method that you are making use of. Primitive method, going to the tribal people, making use of their method, primitive method. But when you say subaltern approach, then you do have in your mind that these people have been exploited by the hegemonic powers who dominated this society. And you become interested in investigating those forces. Right? So therefore, this is the basic difference that you need to keep in mind when you talk about method and approach. Now, after having talked about this, what about technique and strategy? These are the other words which strike you most when you talk about it. What is technique? When you talk about technique, technique means, for example, again, I will give you one very simple example. हिंदी में आपको देता हूं एग्जाम्पल, और हिंदी में वही नीमच माता वाली बात जो मैं अपने विद्यार्थियों को भी देता रहता हूं. मुझे जाना है नीमच माता, पहुंचना है, मैं कैसे जाऊंगा? साइकिल से जाऊंगा. लेकिन साइकिल से कैसे जाऊंगा? द मोमेंट व्हेन आई टॉक अबाउट साइकिल से कैसे जाऊंगा, आई एम कमिंग टू द टेक्निक पार्ट ऑफ इट. साइकिल को मेरे साथ रखूंगा, साइकिल विल अकम्पनी मी, बट आई विल नॉट राइड ऑन इट. Or maybe that I will pedal the cycle, but then I will pedal it very slowly. I will not go very fast because I can't. I enjoy cycling, and therefore very comfortably I will reach that place. Or maybe that I will drive my bicycle very fast because I have to reach that place and I have to come back within half an hour. Technique. Right? So technique is the means of operating the method. Technique is or is one of the means. And if there are several techniques, then you will say that they constitute the bundle of the method. A bundle of the techniques constitute the method. All right, it is the technique that makes the method operative. It is the technique that makes the method operative. After having talked about the technique, I come to the word strategy now. What is a strategy? And it has become very fashionable now. Even I made use of this word strategy right now, but I would say that as a researcher, we should be very careful in making use of this word. Strategy and technique are different, are same, in the sense that that would be my strategy. I would drive the bicycle fast, or I would drive the bicycle very slow. But when we talk about strategy, it implies that I need to achieve my target anyhow. I will not bother about the means. I will not bother about the means, either by hook or by crook. I will achieve the objective. Either by hook or by crook, I will achieve the objective. Yes, Sumanji, perhaps she is putting some question. She is interested in putting some question. Am I right? Sumanji, are you interested in putting some question? Yes, please speak. Please speak.
Yeah, and strategy is something theoretical. Technique is practical, is it not?
Basically, when we talk about, you see, you are confusing two words here. When we talk about strategy is not something theoretical, but stratagem is. Stratagem is, when you talk about research stratagem is something theoretical. But when you talk about strategy is one of the synonyms of technique, but this is moralless. But this is bereft of moral. You are trying to achieve the application part. You try to make something operative. You will make it operative by applying the strategy. But then your object will always be in your mind, either by hook or by crook. I have to attain this objective, then you are making use of the strategy. But then you say,
Thank
I
you.
will make it operative, then technique. Objective you are not keeping in mind right now. I will attain the objective, but then anyhow, because there is a pressure of the boss, I have to attain it. If I don't fulfill this target, then my boss will give me a check, and he will not keep me at his office. Right, my strategy, so that I can fulfill the target. So when you are keeping in mind your target or the objective, and you want to fulfill it either by hook or by crook, you will take recourse to the operationalism through strategy. That will be known as strategy. But when you talk about the things that you are doing morally, you don't have that objective part in your mind. Means that target part you do have, but then the target part is not very focused or heavy on your mind. Then you are taking recourse to technique. And as I said to you, as a research scholar, you must bother about techniques and not much about the strategy part of it. Although it has become very fashionable now to make use of this word, but my sane suggestion is, let us not talk about that. Is that okay? Okay, now
Okay, sir.
let me come to the research tools. What are the research tools? Research tools. And when we talk about the research tools, it may be the book, that may be your research tool. It may be the test that you conduct, that may be your research tool. It may be the interview, that may be your research tool. It may be the survey, that may be your research tool. It may be the checklist that you prepare, that may be your research tool. It may be the language that you make use of. For example, you analyze the research, you analyze the text that you have chosen, and on the basis of the language, you say that the style was very rhetoric. What are you? Language being one of the tools. Then the case studies and several other things of the type would be the tools that you would make use of. Now here the question comes up. How do you make a distinction between the instrument and the tools? When I say research instruments and I say research tools, basically, although sometimes there is an overlapping, let me tell you, but we people must not make use of the word research instrument, because basically when we talk about the instruments, we are referring to the laboratory. If it is language teaching based research, and you are making use of the language laboratory that you have in your, let me say, in your university or in your college, and you are making use of that, in that case, say instrument. Otherwise, normally, let us say, research tools, right? So these are the research tools. Now, coming to a very, very significant point, review of literature, literature review. What do you mean by this? What do you do when you do the literature review? You try to analyze the things. Means these are the things which have been done. In 1930, one article came out and he stated this. In 1935, a book came out that stated this. And then it becomes very difficult for a researcher to talk about all the things together. Therefore, what will you do? You will summarize in brief. You will summarize in brief, and maybe that you will say that maybe 8 to 10 pages, 8 to 10 pages, at least 8 to 10 pages, sometimes it may be more than that, will deal with the research work. Literature review. In that case, I would say that this author has done this, this critique has done this scholar has done this. What is the purpose of doing the literature review? If you don't do the literature review, you are not really researching the topic which has been given to you. The very purpose of literature review is to find out the research gaps. What is the purpose? To find out the research gap. Now, what is a research gap? What is a research gap? Is there anyone who can talk about that? Research gap is a problem that has not been addressed so far. All that related research gap is a problem related to that area that has not been addressed so far. That would be the research gap. Research gap, I repeat what I have said. Research gap is a problem that has not been addressed in the previous studies. I summarized all of them, and therefore what I did, I said that this problem has not been taken care of in the earlier works, and therefore I justify. Research gap is a sort of justification also. This is the research gap, and the present work will fill up that gap. And in that case lies the justification of the present research work. And therefore, Naveenji, when you see the report which I usually send, I usually start preparing the report by providing a justification. How this is justified, which people usually don't do. But then I think that point of justification must be there, because if that point of justification is not there, in that case, on the base, you will identify the research gaps, means the problems which have not been taken care of by the previous studies. And thereafter, you will talk about the relevance and the significance of that research work in the conceptual framework, why the present research work is relevant and significant. When you talk about relevance and significance, is there any difference between the two? When you talk about relevance and significance, because usually we think that both of them are similar. Are they similar? Of course, the relevant things are usually significant, but significant things may not all the time be relevant. Basic difference. Right? The basic difference, the significant things may not be relevant all the time, but usually all the relevant things will be significant all the time. And therefore, nowadays, what is most relevant for us? The corona literature. We would say this is the corona time, and how can I help the humanity? If I have to produce an article, I would go to the humanity, I would be doing something relevant. But why this is significant? Significant in the sense that whenever some epidemic occurs or pandemic occurs, now these guidelines will be there. This is what the people did at that time, significant. So remember that all the relevant things are significant, but all the significant things after a certain period of time may be irrelevant, but they continue to be significant because they are not meant for particular times. Researches are not meant for significance, is not related with a particular period of time. But then relevance is associated with a particular period of time. Relevant. This is relevant today. That is why we say this is relevant today. We never say this is significant today. Right? So keep this point also. So when you write something about the significance and the relevance of the research, keep this very fundamental in your mind. All right, and say that this is relevant and this is significance, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs, maybe that 2 pages, one on relevance, the first paragraph, and then the second paragraph may be about the significance or the other way around. Now, finally, what you will say, you will talk about the tentative plan of the research. Tentative plan. How will you go about it? Tentative plan. And tentative plan also includes tentative chapterization. Tentative plan also includes tentative chapterization. You will say that I will try to complete this work maybe in a year or year and a half or 2 years or 3 years. And the first 2 years I will collect the data, then I will analyze them or tabulate them, and then I will be writing. And this would be the tentative chapterization. Usually don't keep a number of chapters. Again, usually the number of chapter must not exceed, it must be between 5 to 7, not more than 7 usually. Although this is not a rule, I don't say this is a rule, but then if you keep more chapters, it becomes difficult for you to make a proper division, to make a proper chapterization. You would say, how? Now it becomes difficult for you. For example, in the third chapter you talked about certain things, and in the end, what becomes your problem? Your problem becomes that you have to summarize, and then you have to give your findings also. And then the third very important thing is that you need to strike a note with your conceptual framework also. Now, doing all these things together becomes a problem. So keep the number limited, usually not more than 7, but not less than 5 also. If you say that I will keep only 4 chapters, no, that would be too less. Right? So usually, and I have not included introduction. Introduction is not basically a chapter. Call it either conceptual framework or introduction to the research work. But introduction to the research work, as I said, sounds very elementary, and therefore let us say conceptual framework. Now, after having done this, I would say that there are a number of things which remain to be done. After having completed this, you will come to chapter 2, theoretical framework. And in the theoretical framework, as I said to you, what you will talk about? You will talk about the interrelated theories. If it is on feminism, you will be talking about, let us say, Mary Wollstonecraft. And if you remember, she wrote a book, and that book, the seminal work, was a vindication of women, a vindication of the rights of women. That was the work that she came out. Then Simone de Beauvoir. Now she also wrote a book, and that book was written in Italian. The English version is The Second Sex. And then there is Julia Kristeva. Do you know about Julia Kristeva? She talked about, usually her work is not quoted. That is a problem. And we people should take care of that her work should also be quoted. And what she has talked about the pathetic condition of Chinese women. Right? And her work, the name of her work is about Chinese women. Right? So bring out, and you see, it has all been the strategy of China and all the other countries that the literature which are against them do not come in the open. Because I give you one fact of it. Recently, there was I have forgotten the name of that book, a novel that came out some 1 year ago, that is about the sufferings of a woman during the corona period in China. Now, I will let you know the name of that novel, but then most of us might not have read it. It is there on my blog. I keep writing on my blog also. Although as I said to Naveen, I'm a semi-literate, but then I keep seeking help from the people like him, and write on the blog also. So I will send you the address of my blog, and you will find some other fruitful things also on that blog. I will send it to Naveenji, and Naveenji will send it to you. So on that, I have talked about that book. Means we people are not aware, and this is a conspiracy of these countries that they are hatching against us. And when something happens in India that is given such a airy wing, all right, airy wing, I will not say only wing, but airy wings, and the things go from here to million miles away. All right, and we become the culprit all the time. Anyway, thank you so much. If there are any questions, they are most welcome. Otherwise, I would seek his permission to leave. But yes, I would be happy to know your observations and your questions if there is any.
Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. I don't have any words to express my feelings. As it is well said, when emotions are involved, words cease to mean. And I'm short of words to speak such a magnanimous personality. And I don't have any, courage also or fortitude to speak before him. But still, in his own, from whatever I have gathered from his lecture, I would like to summarize in this way. Your approach, respected sir, was pragmatic. Method you applied was full of illustration and examples related to language, literature, and even our day-to-day life. Technique was unique yet simple, and your strategy was what I guessed to enable us to understand the nitty-gritty of research in a very simplified, in a very I should say comprehensive manner. So I think this is the gist of your lecture, the manner in which you describe and differentiated all the technical terms to us from the very first, the conceptual work, then the difference between the conceptual and the theoretical work. And I'm really glad that despite of your hectic schedule, you have given us plenty of time, plenty of food, to think about food, I should say, that we need nourishment from people like you so that we can also enrich ourselves, we can uplift our soul, we can uplift, our, that intellectual level. So from where I should start? You started from the theoretical framework, then the conceptual framework, and you started that you will be having some knowledge about the fundamentals of research or discussion, or about the dissertation. And you have explained us what is the aim, what is the objective, what is hypothesis, or whether we require hypothesis or should we require, not even hypothesis. If you don't require, then you need a strategy or research question must be there. If you don't have any hypothesis, at least there must be some research question. And what should be the criteria for a research question, how to frame it, and research questions, when you use the line of caution, it should not be lengthy enough. If it is lengthy, it will lose its, validity. And then you talked about even about the chapters, how to prepare the summary, or even the conceptual framework, how it will go about. And then you discussed about the certain things related to the target universe of the research. And then even you took the examples from the Dalit literature, from the feminism, from the subaltern literature, and you explained also us very nicely, I should say, what is the difference between a theory and a method. So what is left? It is the hallmark of an excellent deliberation, hallmark of a genius like you. And I think I don't have any words to now say, or even you to speak it in any other language, because the words that you have chosen, they were very appropriate. And I think students, they are highly benefited by your vast ocean-like knowledge and experience. Any question is still, if you have, my dear students, sir is very much here with us. He still is very much with us, and he would be in future also. For a while, I would stop regarding also, so that I can speak before
Just
him.
just
Let me.
just an observation. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
a question.
yeah, yeah.
आपने गागर में सागर भर दिया.